Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we have our very first sponsor. Drum roll please. It's Hobbii! If you've never heard of Hobbii before, they are an online yarn store based in Copenhagen. They sell yarn and a ton of other supplies to yarn lovers like us all around the world. When Hobbii first contacted me, I had heard of them before, but I've never actually purchased their yarn or anything from their store. So I was really interested to find out more. So what did I do? I went straight to my Facebook group and asked you guys what you thought. I didn't know what to expect, but I received so many comments and not a single one was negative. All I received were raving reviews about their yarn, their shipping, and their customer service. So that got me even more excited to work with Hobbii. So today we're going to see if this reflective polyester actually works. You'll hear my unfiltered thoughts about all of these different kinds of yarn, and then we're going to burn it. But no, seriously, we are. I will be reviewing 4 different types of Hobbii branded yarn, which is only a small selection of what they offer in their store. And all of the yarn that I talk about in today's video will be linked in the description. First, we're going to start with Anima Chunky. This yarn is a bulky weight number 5 and is made with 100% acrylic. I originally chose this yarn because I thought it would be a great beginner-friendly yarn that was good for practicing stitches and making beginner projects. Inside my Learn to Crochet Masterclass, I talk a lot about how the best yarn to use for beginners is medium weight yarn or bulky weight, but I never really found a good bulky weight yarn that was great for practicing. And so that's what we're going to find out with this one today. This yarn comes in 100-gram balls that gives you about 109 yards to work with. And there are 61 colors that you can choose from. Now, my very first thoughts when I pulled this out of the bag without even working with it yet is that it's very soft and squishy. The second thing I noticed is that when you look at the strand, it looks like it's not tightly spun. And so my first thoughts is that it might be easy to split because you can really pull apart the plies. So I wasn't too sure how it was going to go whenever I tested it out. So when I started working with it, I was actually pleasantly surprised. I worked several rows using different stitches and it didn't split or fall apart at all. I've tried yarn where the plies would come apart and it's really frustrating, but that didn't happen with this yarn. Yes, it's really easy to untwist, but it seems to snap back together instead of fall apart. Now, according to the label of this yarn, it's machine washable. And in the description online, it says the colors and shape will hold up wash after wash, which is great. Now, a few months ago, I shared that the yarn I used to design the Cheaters gingham blanket was discontinued, and I was super bummed and was trying to figure out the best yarn that would work well for that pattern. It turns out this yarn would be perfect. It has all of the colors you need and even includes some of the alternative color palettes I included in the premium PDF pattern, which makes it a perfect choice to make the traditional gingham blanket or a version of your own. This yarn would also be great for my easy peasy rectangle shawl that I released during the 12 days of Crochet Christmas. All in all, I loved working with this yarn. The recommended hook size is a 7mm, and I would definitely recommend using that or an 8mm if you're making a blanket or using a tighter stitch. It's soft, it glides well, it doesn't split, and it comes in a variety of beautiful colors. The only issues it has is you can see that it will probably pill over time. Now we are on to Starlight. Starlight is a 60% superwash wool, 25% polyamide, and 15% reflective polyester. It is a medium weight number 4, and they come in 50-gram balls, which will give you about 70 yards. I chose this yarn because I was really intrigued by it. I read in the description that this yarn has 15% reflective polyester. And if you don't know what that means, I'm going to share a really fancy demonstration later. But before we get into that, let me tell you more about this yarn. So my first thoughts about this yarn is that they are a lot smaller than what I expected, but that's on me because I clearly didn't read the description. But I was expecting something like this giant ball here, and it's just this little mini ball. However, you can tell that it is very high quality. My other first thought is that it is pretty scratchy. That's known to happen with wool yarn, so I'm not really surprised. But I'm interested to see how it will affect my hands whenever I'm working it up. When I went to test out this yarn, I pulled the strand from the center and it got super tangled and it took me forever to untangle. So if you decide to give this yarn a try, I would use the strand on the outside instead. Or if you're using the strand on the inside, just be careful. It looks like the reflective polyester is just wrapped around a single strand or ply, which is really cool to see how it's constructed. I'm not sure if you can see that in the camera though. Now, working with this yarn, not only can you feel the scratchiness of the wool, but having that 15% of reflective polyester in there, I can also feel that while I'm crocheting. And I think that might be why this yarn feels scratchier than normal. However, I still love the idea behind it. Now, after working with this yarn, I'll let you know that the fabric itself is pretty scratchy. I didn't think I was gonna like working with the yarn because of the scratchiness, but it actually didn't bother me at all. Now, I did notice that they have another yarn on their website called Starlight Soft. And I was really curious to know if it was actually any softer, so I looked more into it. Starlight Soft is made with 86% acrylic, and the other 14% is the reflective polyester. I was reading the reviews and found one that says, after working with both wool and acrylic, I have to say I much prefer this one. It's super soft and easy to work with, and it looks beautiful when finished. So if you're allergic to wool or you'd prefer working with something that's less scratchy, I would give that one a try. When working with this yarn, I love the way the flecks of polyester looks. During the day, it looks super cool and gives a nice subtle mix of color. And at night, the 15% reflective polyester will reflect strong sources of light, like the headlights of a car. How cool is that? And that brings me to why I chose this yarn in the first place. Many people in the crochet community are so giving. And a lot of the time we hear about charity projects. And the moment I heard about this yarn, I was thinking that we could create items out of this yarn and use it to donate to homeless shelters. That way, if they're ever walking around at night, their beautifully made headband, hat, or scarf will serve as another form of protective covering. So that's the thought that I had with this yarn. So stay tuned for patterns like this in the future. But you know I can't recommend something like that unless I test it out myself. So let's try a little experiment. So this here is the picture without the flash when the lights were turned off. And this second picture is with the lights still turned off, but I'm using the flash on my camera. How cool is that? When I first put together this experiment, I was so excited I sent the pictures to my husband, and I'll just show you our conversation. Overall, this yarn, it's easy to work with as long as you don't pull from the center. It's high quality and the colors are really pretty. I love the uniqueness of this yarn. It's not something I've ever seen before. The only thing is that it's pretty pricey for such a small ball of yarn. But again, that comes with natural fibers. Next we have Horizon yarn. I mean, look at these colors. Horizon yarn is a 100% premium anti-pilling acrylic. Each cake comes in a 200-gram ball, and that will give you 601 yards. That is massive. This yarn cost $20.80, so it's definitely not the cheapest yarn out there. However, as of right now, they are having a January sale, so you can get it now for $9.50. Horizon yarn comes in a wide variety of vibrant colors. And it would be the perfect opportunity to create a large, colorful afghan, which is what I'm planning to do with mine. But, and this is a big but, unfortunately, I took one of my cakes out of the bag and immediately it fell apart. I was so sad because I don't even want to know how long that's going to take to untangle. But it's okay, I'll figure it out. The good thing, though, is that I found a solution. And that solution is to use a yarn dispenser. I've talked about this yarn dispenser a million times, both on Instagram and here on my channel. It is one of my absolute favorite tools. So anyway, this yarn dispenser, you put the cake on top, just by sticking it through the center, and then you pull the outside strand, just like that. And this will prevent the yarn from falling apart. But I just want to say that if you do get this yarn, please be very careful when you take it out of the bag. If you don't have a yarn dispenser, just be careful and maybe put your cake inside a large bowl or a basket or a bag so that it doesn't go tumbling off the couch and falling apart. The only reason why it falls apart like this is because of the way it's wound up. So just be careful. When working with this yarn, it feels pretty delicate, like it might be hard to work with. I know that we said that this is a lightweight yarn, but when I'm looking at some of the strands, it looks closer to a weight too. But once you get started, you really get into the groove. This yarn is so soft, both when squishing this giant cake of yarn and also while working with it. You'll also notice that this type of yarn is a self-striping yarn, not a variegated yarn. The difference being that the color changes are very far in between. If you're working on something that's not as wide, like a scarf, one color will go on for a couple rows before switching to the next. But if you're working on a bigger project or a wider project, like a blanket, you could have the opportunity to have one color per row, which I think would look super cool. And actually, if you look at their website at their free patterns to go along with this yarn, you'll see the Horizon Junior blanket that was made using the sky color. And from what I can tell, it looks like it's about 1 or 2 rows per color. And I think this blanket is absolutely gorgeous. You do need about 5 cakes of this yarn to make a blanket, so if you're interested, I would definitely get it now before the sale is over. Now, after working with this yarn, I have really come to love it. It is so soft, it's easy to work with, and the colors are just insanely beautiful. Next, we have this gorgeous rainbow cotton yarn. This yarn is the kind of yarn you want to frame on your wall or display on your shelf. The yarn is just gorgeous, and the little yarn balls are so cute. I love how vibrant the colors are and how they go together so well. This yarn in particular is a lightweight number 3. It's made with 100% cotton and comes in little 50-gram balls, which gives you about 82 yards. And this yarn comes in a huge, I mean huge variety of colors, 101 to be exact. I also noticed this easy start tag as soon as I picked it up, and I thought that that was super cool. They put a little tag on the strand coming from the inside of the yarn, making it easier to work with. And my second thought was, what in the world does 8/8 quality mean? I got your answer, but I'll talk about it after I test out this yarn. Have you ever worked with a yarn where you were so excited that you were constantly saying to your husband, "Babe, look at this stitch definition"? I called him in from cleaning the garage quite a few times because this yarn had me that excited. Seriously though, I started working with this yarn and the stitch definition is magnificent. The colors are friggin' gorgeous and the stitches are easy to see. My hook didn't split the yarn while I was working with it, and it wasn't too tough to work with. You know how some cotton yarns can put stress on your hands? Yeah, not this one. At least not for me personally. I'm not gonna lie, I think this is my new favorite cotton yarn. I heard this yarn was great for amigurumi, so I started crocheting in the round, and I can totally see why it's great for amigurumi. But this yarn would also be great for many different types of projects, especially washcloths, pot holders, table runners, coasters, rugs, and many other home decor items. You can buy this yarn individually and in a few different color packs. And each of these color packs were beautifully combined. I am not someone who is great with combining colors, so this helps me take out the guesswork. Is anyone else bad with matching colors? Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the 8/8 confusion. If you look on their website, you'll see that there are 3 different types of rainbow cotton. There's 8/4, 8/6, and 8/8. These numbers represent the plies or the thickness of each yarn. 8/4 is a 4-ply fingering weight yarn. 8/6 is a 6-ply sport weight yarn. And 8/8 is an 8-ply light worsted DK weight. All in all, I am obsessed. I have so many ideas with this yarn. I don't even want to use this one. Like, I just want to put it on my shelf and display it for nobody to see because nobody comes here. It's just me. But every time I see it, it makes me smile. So why not just display it on the shelf? So now I just need more that I can actually use and make stuff with. One more important thing that I wanted to share. I don't know if you noticed, but on the label of each of these yarns that I reviewed, it says OEKOTEX standard. And I was very curious to know what that meant. So I did some digging. I read that in order to earn this label, it has to go through extensive testing in a lab. On their website, it says, if an article carries this label, you can be certain that every component of this article has been tested for harmful substances and that the article, therefore, is harmless for human health. That sounds pretty incredible to me, and I love a company that puts their customers first. Now, last but certainly not least, we have Baby Snuggle. Baby Snuggle is made with 100% polyester. It is a super bulky weight number 6 and comes in 100-gram balls, giving you about 131 yards. My first thoughts on this yarn is pretty much the same as the rainbow cotton. It's so soft. I just want to snuggle with it. Get it? Sometimes when we're ordering online, we get a little worried that when we pick a color online that it's not going to turn out like the same color. And I've noticed with all of the yarns that I have reviewed today that each of them have been almost exactly the same color as what it shows on the website. So that's a huge plus. As soon as I started working with this yarn, I noticed a few things. For one, it's amazing to work with. This yarn is so soft and it really glides through both my fingers and my hook. This is another one of those yarns where you keep stopping to admire how beautiful it is. I feel like this yarn is different from other velvet yarns because while I'm working with these stitches, you can actually see the top of the stitch, which makes it easier to work with if you're a beginner. Usually for velvet yarns and other types of novelty yarns, I like to work in between stitches because it's harder to see the top of the stitch. But for this yarn, I don't think that's necessary. I really enjoyed experimenting with this yarn because, again, when it comes to novelty yarns like this, it doesn't always have the best stitch definition. But here I worked into the back loop only and found the outcome really surprising. Working through the back loop only usually gives you a ribbed effect. And while this still does, it's just more subtle, and I think it would just make a really pretty baby blanket. Another thing about velvet yarn that I don't really like is the flaking. Whenever I've worked with these types of yarns in the past, I've noticed that some of the yarn strands come off, especially if I'm frogging. But I noticed that this one, I didn't have that problem at all. It's fairly easy to frog too. I will say that at the end of the yarn, it does flake, so be careful not to pull off the strands or the little fluffy pieces. And another thing that I really love about Hobbii is their description. So if you're ever ordering any yarn from Hobbii, make sure you read the description. They list a lot of great pattern ideas and tips for working with that particular yarn. So in the description for this yarn, it says specifically to always start and finish your projects with Baby Snuggle in the following manner. 1, you can tie a small, tight knot at the end of the yarn where you're starting, and again when you're finishing your work. Or 2, very carefully burn the tip of the yarn. It will melt into a little hard ball. Repeat every time you change skeins. This will ensure that the fibers don't slide off the yarn as you're working with it. I'm not too sure how to do this. Never burned yarn before, but there's a first time for everything. Now for any crochet project, whenever you reach the end of the row, to tie off, you're going to yarn over, cut your yarn a few strands, and then pull tight to secure. Then it's time to weave in ends. But because this yarn flakes at the end, like this, we don't want that to happen to your finished project. So what Hobbii suggests is to take a lighter and burn the tip. So let's give that a go and see what happens. I have never done this before, but what better time to test something out than on a yarn review video? All right, here we go. All right, so this is what we have after setting fire to our yarn. The tip is nice and toasty, and I think we could probably snap that off. And so when I try to pull off the ends of the fibers, they don't come off. So you do have this little burnt tip here, but it's really not that noticeable. So that was pretty cool. So now that our end is burnt, we're going to weave in our ends. That way our ends are still secure. And we also won't have to worry about And actually, while I was weaving in that end, the burnt tip came off. So since I just weaved in my ends, I'm going to cut just a little bit, and then I'm going to carefully catch this little bit on fire. I don't even have to go that close. I don't know if you can see, but I didn't go that close because I didn't want to catch my whole swatch on fire, but it did create that little bit of a burnt tip. So you don't even have to bring it that close. Make sure that if you do this at home that you are very, very careful. So now we have our ends woven in, and you can barely see that little tip in there. And now that your tip is burned, you won't have to worry about the flakes of your yarn falling off. So in order to tie this off, instead of weaving in ends, and again, I could be wrong, but this is what I'm thinking they meant. Go ahead and snip your yarn so that it's close to the edge. So this is the only tail that we have left. And now we're going to take our lighter and we're going to light the flame and put it close to it, but not right next to it. We don't want to set our house on fire, okay? So please be very careful with this. So we have our fire, and I'm just going to get it close to the strand. And you can already see it starting to shrink. Okay, I don't think that's close enough, so I'm going to try again. So see, this is our knot right here. So I'm going to go ahead and try again. And even when you get close to it, it starts to shrivel up and turn into a hard ball. And there you go. So that's kind of cool that you can do that. Yes, you can still see a little bit of the burnt tip here, but I don't think that that's too big of a deal, and that's only if you decide to do this way. This yarn is so soft, it glides smoothly. There's a little bit of those strands that come off your yarn, but I love the fact that Hobbii gives you the option to fix that. This yarn comes in 37 beautiful pastel colors. It's machine washable and easy to frog if you make a mistake. So do I think it's beginner friendly? Absolutely. The softness of this yarn makes it perfect for baby items like blankets and stuffed animals, but I could definitely see this making a snuggly headband, scrunchies, or even a pillow. There are so many possibilities. Now, before you go, I highly recommend checking out Hobbii's website. They offer hundreds of free patterns, so I highly recommend taking advantage of those. But what you might not know is that Hobbii also has a program called Hobbii Plus. These Hobbii Plus patterns are created by designers from all over the world. As a Hobbii Plus member, you will receive 3 free Plus patterns per month. You'll get double the points on each order, 10% off all regular priced items, a weekly scratch card, and extra candy. Now, I had no idea about this, but Hobbii also has a bingo app. And according to one of the members in my Facebook group, their bingo games can be pretty fun. She says they play bingo every Sunday, and the prizes for the winners are a ton of yarn and potential supplies. I absolutely love this company.
Oh.
Now that's pretty cool. I'm going to have to check out their bingo app too.
Here you go.
Thank you. And that is it for my review of Hobbii yarns. I want to say a huge thank you to Hobbii for allowing me the opportunity to review these yarns. I've definitely found a new favorite online store, and I can't wait to place my next order.